Hi, everybody. This is Melody LeBaron with Transforming Space, Self, and Loss. And I'm here with Dr. Sheila Collins. Sheila Collins believes that in facing life's toughest challenges, we mature into who we truly are. Her writing, teaching, speaking, and improvisational artist performances offer thought-provoking insights, embodied practices, and art-based tools to help people deal with what life presents them. Her award-winning book, which I have lent mine out because it was that good, Warrior Mother, Fierce Love, Unbearable Loss, and the Rituals That Heal, describe her journeys with two of her three adult children and her best friend through their life-threatening illnesses and deaths, and of the rituals that helped her family to heal. Using her background as a dancer, social work professor, therapist, and artist, Dr. Collins demonstrates in her presentations how art-based tools have helped her and can help others live joyful, embodied lives. Her 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 2016 TED Talk, When Death Threatens Someone We Love, demonstrates the challenge of being a caregiver to a loved one dealing with a death-defying illness and the gifts that are present in such circumstances. Her book for professional and family caregivers, revised with co-author Christine Gautreau in 2018, is Still Point, a self-care playbook for caregivers to find ease, time to breathe, and reclaim joy. And this is one of my very favorites. And we are going to be talking today about her book, her new book, The Art of Grieving. And I highly recommend signing up for her blog called Dancing with Everything, that is on her website, Sheila Collins, SheilaKCollins.com. So welcome, Dr. Sheila.
So great to see you, Melody. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So why don't we start by you giving us your background? If I had asked you when you were a young woman,
Mhm.
um, do you want to be working in the field of grief and loss? What would you have told me?
I don't think I would have even known what that meant. Absolutely. I one of my fields when I was in the academic world, I did research on women's careers. And there was, I can't say the name of the author, but a woman who wrote a book about women's careers. And it said, the title was, Is This Where I Was Going? Because you know how we are. I mean, so when there are restrictions on what you can do and not do, and you're looking for the openings, right? And
Right,
so we're responding to what's presented to us.
right, right. And for me, until I had the experience of supporting my mother through her dying process when I was 35, it changed me so much. And I think the grief, we'll speak to this today, the grief changed me, but the empowerment of being able to do what was needed in the messy and the majestic process of dying really shifted my viewpoint about the field of grief and loss. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And you've done the same thing. As I read your book, Warrior Mother, I've lost one child, one of my five. You've lost two of your three. And you've also accompanied your best friend through her dying process. How did those experiences change you?
Well, um, you know that we say sometimes, I am because you are, that I mean, my life would be
Yes.
different if I didn't know you or some person, but it's also true. This is so life changing, and really the whole process of grief, which we have we have gotten it wrong and we have been given wrong information, but because it's not stair steps that you climb and then, and it's done, it continues to keep coming back to you as
Yeah,
gift. I think if we get to the place where we can appreciate it as a
right,
gift.
right. Yes, what I discovered, I thought I understood grief. I thought I really understood grief. I had been through a divorce and a custody battle. I'd lost my mother. I'd accompanied my younger sister through her dying process and grieved. So I thought I did understand the process of grief. And then my 17-year-old son died. And I realized, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
this is grief this is so intense. And I recognized I have during those early months, the first few years of the intensity, I realized I have four other children who need me. I have a business. I was in school at the time, but I also realized it's some inner wisdom that the most important thing that I would do for my well-being was to allow my grief to move through me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this was back in 97. There weren't books like yours. There weren't voices like yours back then, but some inner wisdom, and in reading your book, I am just so moved. I'm going to read actually something you sent out in your recent Dancing with Everything blog. During the time I was researching responses to loss for my book, The Art of Grieving, I worked with several organizations of nuns. They shared a ritual they do when losses occur in their community. This ritual begins with a question, one that each of us can ask ourselves in the situation of horrific loss. And for those of us in Western North Carolina, in Florida, in Los Angeles, and some of us are feeling this in our entire country right now, we are feeling loss. And so I want to just ask this question, and then we'll ask you to flesh this out for us. You ask the question and then respectfully wait for the answers. And the questions are, to what life are these losses calling us? To what life are they specifically calling me? That is so powerful. That is so profound. And so I'd like you to help flesh that out and help those of us who are dealing with loss understand what it means to answer that question.
Well, I think you have experienced it as I have experienced that sometimes that what we are called to do is to share what we've learned in some way, in some artistic way, which is what my book is. This book is The Art of Grieving is, because I recognized I was a social worker and I had some of the same misconceptions that everybody else had. That it was going to be these stair steps and you're done and then that's it. And of course, it's not true. So you always feel like you're doing it wrong. And everybody else is too. So I became very curious about how did we get to this place? And so I started writing and researching about our whole Western culture. And we have taken away from the ancestors really knew, but somehow we got taken away from that. And so they knew that there wasn't such a thing as a private grief. It's not just you having a loss, but it's a loss in the community. It's a loss in the family. It's a loss of the future that you thought you were going to that you were going to have. So I began to see loss. And so then I got the idea, okay, so we have to get good at loss. I mean, we need to be able to get good at it. Perhaps that needs to be an art. That's where I came up with this notion of the art of grieving.
Ah,
And also because when I looked back on my own life, what was it that really helped me to process those losses? And of course, it was community for sure, and people holding me up. I mean, I think at one point when my daughter was in the hospital, I felt like somebody was just holding me. The air was holding me up. It had to be because I didn't have any strength to hold myself up.
Mm,
So I really got that, understanding. But also, I was I was teaching and I was doing dancing and using the tools of interplay, which is really it's they're transformational tools based on our own stories. So one of the things, for example, when something happens, we want to tell, we want to say, and we come in a culture where you're not supposed to say, or people are looking around for the exit while you're trying to describe it. So that's what got me into, and that was what that loss was calling me to, that to see if I could start writing about all kinds of losses. And
right.
when you say, I mean, I look at young people now and the future that they are looking at as far as
Yes.
our natural world is concerned. This is, it's very anticipatory. I mean, what is this going to be?
Yes. Yes, indeed. There is a way in which my family was all just together for my 70th birthday earlier this month. And it's very clear to me that my grandchildren, ages 25 and 27 this year, are making their life plans. They're orienting where they're going to live around climate change. They are very aware. Our younger generation is very aware. And they are very aware that my generation, what it feels to them like is we have pulled up the ladder of success behind us. We were able to buy a home. My first home in the 70s cost $30,000. Like we were able to have middle class incomes and buy a home. And only one of my children has been able to do that. All of them have jobs. Only one of my children was able to do that. So there's a way in which uh, the economy is rigged. The justice system seems to be unfair. The climate is increasingly unstable. And one of the grief rituals that I did after my children and grandchildren left is I made a fire. I created a fire and asked the element of fire to purify and help me release two beliefs that I discovered that were causing tension in my body, in my life, that were creating resistance. And one of those beliefs is the belief that I needed to live on a planet with a stable climate. Well, I'm alive and I don't live on a planet with a stable climate. So I recognized as I was trying to figure out what was causing all this resistance. Oh, I am alive. I don't live on a planet with a stable climate. Let me release that belief that I need it. And the other one, very sadly, is the belief that I need to live in a healthy democracy
Mhm.
because I'm alive and I don't live in a healthy democracy. So, you know, there's all kinds of ways that I have learned, and I know you have learned, to work with what's going on in our consciousness and also to work with what's happening in our communities. And I would love for you to speak more about that.
Yes, in the notion of, for example, communal processing of grief, communal rituals. So I have a story in the book about I have a class online, and it just so happened that a person from Israel is a member of the class. So when October 7th comes along, I know somebody who's over in this area. We know, it's awful to read about it anyway, but if you know someone personally, and so then I write about he comes on from Israel in the middle of this. And so this is the good part about being in, online and all that. Anyway, and he said it was just so wonderful to see the smiles and the encouragement, or and so I just that was really important to realize we can't let this devastate us. I mean, how do we keep ourselves in a place where we can get the wisdom from the situation to carry on to change what needs to be changed?
Yeah.
But if we get devastated by it, then it
Right.
doesn't
Right.
help. So that's that notion of the arts and how we can. So I got online. There's a Let's Reimagine is the name of the platform, and I've done quite a bit of presenting on that platform and connecting with other people on it to really explore the process of grief and using the arts. So, and I just realized that we have to keep ourselves going. And funny in a way, because that sends me back to the book I wrote, which you held up a little while ago, is on self-care. And
Yes.
if we don't take care of ourselves, we don't,
Right.
it's not good. It's not good. So, yeah, we
So
matter too.
yeah, that releasing ceremony I just did was in an online Zoom event. We each had our
Wow.
own little fires,
Oh,
right?
wonderful.
But
Yeah.
I have attended some of your grief rituals on the Let's Reimagine platform. They are so powerful, using spoken word, poetry, dance, to create an experience, and then everyone gets to move in some way. And maybe could you speak to what I know you have learned about the importance not just of grieving in community, in person ideally, but online works, but of allowing the grief to actually move the body. Grief cannot be accomplished from the neck up.
Well, that's exactly coming at all of this from all as a dancer. I mean, I started dancing at 3 years old. I mean, I don't remember when I wasn't dancing, and I would just do things in my life like, I mean, there's no real support for somebody doing this, but I would say, well, I just want to keep dancing because I knew that something was magical that was happening for me, not just in the dancing, but something about not holding. See, if some things are too big for our one body or even a small body, a group of people to hold, we can't hold it. So that's really, and then of course, the other piece that people know, poets know, the gift of grief is joy. It just is. So when we take away people's doing that, and who can do it, and you have to be certain skill or something. So that's another thing that it's led me to realize it doesn't matter how good you do it. It's not a contest, And so that notion of reclaiming what we say in interplay, these birthright practices of singing, dancing, storytelling, doing art, making objects, giving objects to people as a gift to represent. One of the things I want to say about your work, Melanie, you talk about space and the sacred. How do you create sacred space? Or we are very affected by the space we're in,
Yeah.
and so what is that like? And when I go through my house, I can tell you, there's a story. All these objects in my house, I know I have to keep cleaning that out, and
Yeah.
you're good at that too. But I, it brings I have in my garden right outside the window. It's snow covered right now, but my sister had given me a statue that was like a garden statue, and it was of two little girls, one of them a little bit taller than the other one, and it represented for her our relationship. So I have that right out. I can see it while I'm talking to you, but I can look out and see it and keep her and the love that she and I have for each other close. It's
Yeah.
still, I am loved. I am loved. You are loved, and that's we behave differently when we're like when we have that thought,
You bring up a really important point that when grief is metabolized, when it's catalyzed well, the gift is joy. And and to someone in the first weeks or months of grief, when you think the tears and the wailing will never stop, here's what I just want to promise you is that if you will let that move through your body and find the community that can grieve with you, on the other end of that, the person you're longing for there will be a greater feeling of love, joy, and connection, gratitude that life and love still lives in your consciousness, in your heart. Um, I'd love to look now at some bigger losses. We've talked about climate change. There's a lot going on in our country right now that is creating loss for groups of people. And it may feel like to some like I'm in overwhelm. It's the
Wow.
first few stage weeks after a loss, we often go into shock. We feel overwhelmed. We feel maybe even we're wrapped in cotton batting. And what would you suggest for people who are in a state of shock or overwhelm?
Well, I think that that's where you have this love and there's nowhere for it to go. And so we have to bring it into ourselves.
Mm,
That's the movement that I think of. What, you know, and then one of the things which it helps me a lot is the notion of dancing on behalf of. So I can move on behalf. I can imagine what it is I want to have happen, what it is I know is trying to happen, but we people are not cooperating with it at all. That's what it feels like. I do believe that, in Martin Luther King's that justice is trying to happen, and we do a lot of stuff to try to help it happen. But then there's this backlash that comes that just blows us away. So,
right.
in one of our self-care classes, we were looking at what are the skills, and one of them is to look at things with a broader perspective and to say, we may have been more successful than we thought we were because we have this is a backlash situation. These people are really trying to undo what we have done. And
Right.
so, that notion, though, of what is mine to do, that's very important too, in terms of what can I do that will move forward. That going back to that question the sisters asked, what is it that I'm called to do in this situation? And sometimes it is something related to in memory of or in somebody that's gone, but it could be also in organizing the women or I mean, it's hard to know what the blessing is going to be, but that notion of waiting and being you see in our creative intuitive minds, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get into that creative intuitive mind, and music takes us there,
Yeah.
and dance takes us there,
Yeah.
and writing takes us there. It puts us into, well, I've gotten, so I just say this to myself and other people, we have to be in a place where that place in our brain that's smarter than we are. I mean,
I love this.
yeah,
And
because
I
we think we're going
yeah,
to figure all this out up here. No, no, we're not. We're not.
right, right. So with my grief work where I discovered these two beliefs that were creating drag or resistance for me, one of the things you've just given me is that in addition, so releasing the need, right? Releasing those needs has freed me up. I have had more bandwidth, time, and attention in the last weeks to act on behalf of the
Mhm,
more beautiful world my heart knows is possible, to paraphrase Charles Eisenstein. Um, but to dance on
mhm,
behalf
mhm,
of that more beautiful world, to paint on behalf of
mhm,
that healthy democracy or that more stable climate. Like, yes, we can all do that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that's and I in my coaching work,
Mm-hmm.
I actually work with many clients who are coming out of some kind of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I think addiction is rampant in our country, and I think much of it stems from the need or the addiction to approval. And I was definitely came out of childhood with that addiction to approval.
Mm-hmm.
And so in studying in my own recovery, um, studying the rescuer victim perpetrator
Oh, yeah.
triangle,
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
the one way to get out of feeling like a victim is to create something.
Yes.
It
Yes.
can be to dance, to sing, to, and in reflecting back, when my son died, I had two practices that I made sure I did one or both of them every day. One was to attend, I regularly attended two, if not three, yoga classes a week where I would sit in the back and move my body and just let the tears come.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you tune into the body's wisdom, if you're grieving, the tears can come. And the other was that I turned my car, when I was alone in my car, I turned it into a sonic sanctuary. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a cassette tape of grief songs that
Mm.
I would sing to or cry to.
Right.
And looking back now, I recognize that even though I was very busy, making myself, practicing that self-care of going to those yoga classes, singing along with those songs was taking me out of the role of victim
Yes.
and putting me in the role of creator.
Exactly. When we have lost, we to create anything, also the tradition is interesting. You said your car was your booth. Mine was the shower. I'd get in the shower and because the tile, it kind of makes it, you sound better, and I don't know, it does something to the sound. It makes it better, and then I get out and go on with my life, kind of thing, But yeah, so that you're beginning to create, and in reality, I mentioned about the people we come from, our birthright practices. Lament is a lament, and laments were done by women, usually older women. Also, they were done on behalf of, maybe you weren't, the person doing the lament was not just making the sound for themselves. They were making it for the whole community or for who it
Yes.
was. So one of the things I do with people, and you have that there's an activity you can do for you with yourself to take you through a lament so that you let your voice, because
Oh,
the voice is really, when we say someone finds their voice, it means more than just a sound. It's something very central to who we are, to find our voices and to let our voices speak.
yeah. Do you know, I equate finding our voice with finding our power. I think
Oh,
they're I think they're very similar. I don't
mm-hmm,
think we can find our power
mm-hmm,
until and unless we have found our voice.
mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah.
And that notion of writing, you that was what I was using. And that wasn't my go-to form. It wasn't, but it just felt like I needed to find the right words. I needed to make it make sense up here, but it had to come from more from my heart. And
Mm.
so that there's lots of research on that. In fact, one of the wonderful things, just about the time my book was coming out, there was a book that two women from Johns Hopkins University were putting together, and it's called Your Brain on Art. Your Brain on Art, how art transforms us. I'm promoting that book as much as I'm promoting my own book on the art of grieving, because they are demonstrating the science behind what you and I are talking about.
Wow.
Science. How do people what happens in the brain when someone draws? What happens in the brain when someone sings? What
Hmm.
happens in the brain when someone dances? It's
Yeah.
very interesting. So that's what we're doing. We're just changing our brains to
Love
that
it.
place of creativity.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Sheila. Is there anything that you have coming up that you want people to know about and talk about how people can get in touch with you?
Yes. Well, I am in a place now that the book's out, and the other book that I did, we put it online and started going through the book, and it was so powerful. We're still doing that, some of us, and so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a class, a group, a gathering on the Reimagine platform, and February 19th, I think, is when it's starting. I'm going to do it once a month, and I see it as really getting people together who really want to take it one step at a time in terms of loss. And then, what about art, and how art is the collaborator? Sometimes it's medicine that we can learn how to do. And so I'm very excited about that. And that will be on the Reimagine platform. I'm moving my writing to Substack, which is an interesting, kind of scary thing. But there's so many wonderful writers on Substack, and people that are trying to do similar or related things to what I'm trying to do. So I'm hoping that I will be able to connect with people, and then also uh, gather the women. I mean, that's
Yes.
through my life, that's what I've done. And it's time to gather now around some other matters that are for as an elder, I feel that I need to be in a place of what is for the next generation. And it is much bigger than you and I. It's much bigger.
Much bigger than even our country. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I agree. I feel like about 10 years ago, I entered the stage that psychologist Eric Erickson called the stage of generativity, where you are not just concerned about your own life and family and community, but you are concerned about sustainability and regeneration um, uh, and life
and
for,
world and world peace. I was just online with the world. We did a peace conference in Dallas. I don't know, 1997, I think. Where all these women got together, and so it's time again to be. How can we be more peaceful? How can we find the approach that we need to move forward? And then how can we influence other people? And I think somebody asked me, actually men asked me this question: is what you do just for women? And what I say, I now have an answer for that. Um, I, there was a women's center in Fort Worth, Texas, and it was a women's center, and they had a shelter, one of the first shelters in the country. And but Karen Perkins was her name, and she said, "This is for women and the men who love them." And
mm,
that just feels in my body the right way. There are men who do not love women, and I get that, and they're very noisy about it.
yes.
But there are men who are very in touch with their feminine side, who really care about their children, who care about the next generation in a way that's very important. So that's yeah, that's my that's what I'm.
Beautiful.
It's
Beautiful. Well, Sheila, we're going to include all of this in the show notes. I am so grateful for this conversation and for being able to point people in the direction of not just a book, but of ongoing online activities that can help us move through our grief in community, move it through the body in ways that make us more able, more fit, emotionally, mentally, physically able to participate in the creation of a more peaceful, beautiful world. So
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
All right.